This is the Fit Mess, where together we learn to develop habits that help us live beyond our mental health struggles to create happier, healthier lives.
He's Zach. He lives in the future with his anxiety.
He's Jeremy, and he lives in the past with his depression. And we get together once a week in the present to share the obstacles we face and how we overcome them.
Hello there, Jeremy here. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast and press and play on this one. And I'm just sitting here thinking about how timing is a funny thing. I say that as I just walked out the door to go for a hike in the mountains with a friend of mine. And literally the minute I opened the door to walk outside, the rain just started dumping. And it just, oh man, that can be so frustrating when you're trying to time things just the way you want them to go. And then something doesn't work out in the timing of it. And then you're kind of screwed. It's kind of how I'm feeling right now. But when it comes to timing, I actually learned something recently, and I'm going to share it with you in the conversation here that I'm about to have with Dr. Sarah Doyle. And I'm especially happy that I can tell you I learned something, because having done a few hundred episodes of this show now, doing as many interviews as I've done, you tend to hear a lot of the same things. You tend to hear, get good sleep, don't eat trash, move your body. Like it is. When it comes down to it, it generally is the basics that are going to move the needle the most for you. But I can honestly say this is the first interview I've done in a very long time where I heard something I hadn't heard before. And it's less about what you eat and more about when you eat it. As it turns out, that can have a big impact on the way your body uses that energy, stores that energy, and affects your hormones and all the other things your body needs to function at its best. And speaking of hormones, I think that you're about to hear that they probably play a much bigger part in your weight management goals than you might have ever realized. Like I said, the advice we give on this show typically, and what we hear from a lot of the people we talk to, focuses on the basics, because the basics, I think, generally apply to a lot of people. A lot of people don't sleep enough or don't sleep well. A lot of people eat a lot of processed crap because it's all we can afford or have time to prepare. And a lot of us are tied to a desk for 8 to 9 hours a day and then probably stuck in a car for an hour or two a day and don't have the time or the resources to move the way we need to. But according to Dr. Doyle, those might not even be the biggest factors that you need to change in order to achieve the goals you're trying to reach. So for this episode, we partnered with Dr. Sarah Doyle to share her 7X method. It's based on ancient wisdom that meets modern science, an approach that could transform your relationship with food forever. So this is me talking with Dr. Doyle about what she says is the truth about food and your body that's never been told until now. Where I want to start, though, is really with the title of your book, the 7X method, the truth about food and your body that has never been told until now. What is that truth that has never been told until now?
Okay, so I can guarantee that when you listen to that book or read that book, that it's something you've never heard before. And the reason is because I learned it in a remote region of Central America when I was traveling by myself. And I went to go visit a friend during the pandemic, and he's like, "Oh, you got to meet this guy in town. You guys are always talking about like energy. You guys will totally hit it off." So I talked to him, I meet the guy, and he's like a real life shaman. Like he's working as a liaison with this quantum medicine program. It's like a healing center. In 2020, it was celebrating its 10th year. And people go there from all over the world with diseases, and they get healed using food as medicine. They don't want Americans to know about it. That's why I keep it private. But they gave me permission to reproduce a basic timed eating protocols that prevent disease and help recalibrate the metabolism. So it's pretty fantastic, pretty neat stuff. I took the information home after trying it for a couple weeks. I was skeptical, but I was like, it kind of makes sense. So like, what the hell, I'll give it a shot. So I did the eating plan, changed the way I eat. You just change what time of day that you eat things. It's rooted in circadian science, meaning that our body is influenced energetically by the position of the sun during the day. And different organs and systems take turns resting and peaking in activity. So that means that, we can look at our watch, like I'm hungry. I look at my watch, I'm like, oh, okay, it's the blue group. I'll eat something from the blue group. Or I look at my watch and it's like the orange group. I'm like, okay, good. I'll get something from the orange group. Like it's something, that's the basic principle. There's 7 food groups, 7 different groups of organs and systems. And it's kind of like the rainbow. There's 7 different colors in the rainbow. Doesn't occur in the same order, but yeah, that's the gist of it.
So give me an example of what that looks like on an average day for you or one of your clients that you've worked with to teach them this method.
Yeah, absolutely. Every day I get up between 7 and 9, and well, I get up earlier than that, but I don't have to eat anything till like 7 a.m. till the sun comes up, and I'll have some coffee I make homemade Brazilian nut milk. I make Brazil nut milk, and then I'll have some chocolate, some dark chocolate. You can also just have like nuts, berries, seeds. That's the time of day you want to eat these things. You don't want to eat this so the theory is that your body makes digestive enzymes for certain types of food at a certain time of the day. So you don't want to eat nuts before bed. Your body's not ready to digest that. You want to eat them in the morning. No carbs. No carbs. Carbs are the last thing you eat during the day. And that's because they make you sleepy. They prepare your nervous system for sleep.
That's interesting. So I've worked with a lot of coaches that recommend like a high protein, high fat, sort of breakfast, and tapering to the carbs in the later part of the day to sort of replenish their energy, and then, like you said, sleep a little better. Is that pretty much in line with this method you're talking about? No,
this is like nothing you've ever heard. So in the morning, we want to stick to like fruits, nuts. You don't want anything super heavy like that. We don't want to introduce proteins until like after 12 noon. So the first group is blue group. That's nuts, seeds, chocolates. The second group is blue group. Did I just say blue? First one's purple group, then blue group. Blue group is all fruits, and that nourishes your thyroid. And that's because your thyroid works all night long, wants to rest, it wants nourishment. And so you eat fruit to nourish it. Then the next group is the green group. That is between roughly 11, like we have daylight savings, right? So seasonally the times change, but roughly 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And that's the green group. That's when the dominant wavelength from the sun is green. That's when you should eat most of your green stuff. That's when you eat your salads. Don't eat salad at dinner. It's not, your body can't digest it. You want to eat it when the sun is at the highest point in the sky. Same thing right there. After the green group is the red group. That's when you want to eat red meat. They say, oh, red meat causes cancer, but it doesn't. It probably causes cancer if you eat it at like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, because your colon wants to stop working. The circadian rhythm of your pancreas is to stop working at like 7 p.m. So it's a hard stop, even like in wintertime when the sun sets really early, you want to maybe even stop eating a little bit earlier, back everything up, and stop eating after 6 p.m. So after the red group is the the yellow group. That's all the non-green vegetables. And then is the orange group. That's short chain fatty acids like herbal teas, legumes. And then the last group is the white group. So you can't eat, a normal dinner with your family, but you want to have like cooked vegetables, cooked non-green vegetables, obviously, so it's closer to the yellow group. That's when you want to have your whites. And maybe if you want protein, then eat something light like chicken or fish. You don't want to eat red meat at dinner time. You want to eat red meat earlier in the day. Red meat and salad, if you think about it, they're like the hardest things to digest. So you want your raw veggies and your red meats when the sun is at the highest point in the sky and your body's prepared to assimilate the nutrients. So all these food groups coordinate with the circadian rhythm of organs and systems, and it follows the same principle. Just like you go to the gym, you work out, you eat, and then you rest, and then you repeat the cycle. Well, it's the same thing. So every every food group coordinates with the circadian rhythm of an organ or system. The red group is your adrenals, your heart, your blood. Those foods nourish those systems, and your adrenal glands work the hardest in the morning, and so they're ready for rest and nutrition in the early afternoon. That's the red group. So everything, like I said, the thyroid is the blue group. Thyroid works really hard overnight, pumping out T4, and then it takes a rest between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. And that's why people who have thyroid problems often feel kind of tired in the afternoon, tired and cold, because that's the circadian rhythm of the thyroid.
Interesting. So as you've adapted this to your eating style, and I'm sure coached plenty of others to do so, what are the effects? How do you feel having made that change?
Completely changed my digestion. It completely changed my sleep. I would say it's almost, it helps your intelligence. I want to say if you do this for a long time, but even in the beginning, the first week, I usually start my clients on it. The first week they start my coaching program because we do online testing. We do at-home testing. So while we're waiting for the test to come to their house, we get them started with the food. And then what they notice is their inflammation decreases. Some people lose 5 or 10 pounds in a week just because they're constipated, they're inflamed, and it's because they're eating the wrong foods at the wrong time. So just changing the time of day that you eat things, people drop a pant size. They're like, without even exercising. They're like, what just happened? And like a long term, like their joint pain goes away, their carpal tunnel goes away, the eczema goes away, all these things start to go away. Arthritis is the number one thing that goes away with people. They say they can run faster, they go train harder, or they can play, depending on their age group and their prior level of function. But, they can play with their grandchildren more. They can get on and off the floor without having to think about it. Like it increases their quality of life, just the food alone.
Yeah. You mentioned thyroid and hormone issues. I know people that live with hypothyroidism, with Hashimoto's. How does this benefit those folks at all? Does it help with that thyroid function as well?
Yeah, it sure does. A lot of mainstream doctors don't tell people with Hashimoto's. Like I've had clients that have Hashimoto's and their doctors never told them that gluten and dairy are two main triggers. Other triggers are soy, corn. And then, if they're in my coaching program, we'll dive a little bit deeper and make sure that they don't have some H. pylori or there's another parasite, Blastocystis hominis, that can also turn on Hashimoto's. Hashimoto's is also turned on by Epstein-Barr disease. Like 90% of people have Epstein-Barr virus living dormant in them. It was mono that everybody got, in middle school.
Yeah, I think I had it twice.
Yeah, it's like chickenpox. It was like a rite of passage. So, it lives in as dormant, and then the spike protein from COVID or the COVID vaccine will reactivate the Epstein-Barr that reactivates Hashimoto's. So it's a multifactorial disease, but for sure, just changing the food that they eat and following the 7X method will help the autoimmune.
So you mentioned sort of weight loss in this. I know thyroid plays a function in that as well. And a lot of people that do struggle with thyroid issues struggle with weight loss issues. So talk to me about sort of balancing hormone and diet and medication, all of that. How does that all play together with this diet method?
Sure. Well, my coaching program goes way beyond the diet. That's just a good start. It's a good foundation. Thyroidism affects like 40% of women, and T3 conversion is intertwined with estrogen levels and cortisol levels. So we really have to look at the person individually. Like there's no one size fits all. We look at the person individually. We look at what toxins they're exposed to. We look at their micronutrient levels. Like I have a test that will test for all their antibodies and heavy metals. So we want to see if there's if you look at the periodic table of elements, where iodine is, there's also bromine. So if you have bromine in your, you find a lot of bromine in your urine, then we got to detox that. Or if you have a lot of mercury from eating fish, then we have to detox that because that also interacts with the iodine in the receptor. So your thyroid makes T4. T4 catches a ride on albumin, usually it's a protein in the blood, and goes to the target tissue. Within the target tissue, it will convert to T3. That's largely the liver. So if you don't have enough iodine or enough selenium, you're not going to make that conversion. If you have a lot of heavy metals, you're not going to make that conversion. So you have to look at why you have hypothyroidism. Are there a lot of antibodies? Like I can see if there's a certain antibody present, I know it's heavy metals, and we look at that. If it's both antibodies, then I know it's Hashimoto's. We really have to look at diet, or like I said, with that parasite or the bacteria.
So all of this is sort of getting to a place of better fitness. A lot of what we talk about on this show is mental health. So talk to me a little bit about how getting to a better place physically, health, from a health perspective, plays into better mental health.
Your gut is everything. I talk about it in my book, The 7X Method. I talk about blood types too. I integrate parts from the blood type diet. Because even though I was using the 7X method, the way I learned it in Central America, I still had some coaching clients that were like, oh, I still feel bloated and blah, blah, blah. So I started integrating parts of the blood type diet. And that's how, so I call it the 7X method. And so 40% of Americans, and I'm sure Canada's not much different, have blood type O. Well, gluten and dairy are really inflammatory to blood type O. Another 40% are blood type A. Well, gluten and dairy are really inflammatory to blood type A. Blood type B can tolerate gluten and dairy, but that's what? But there's A and AB that makes up less than 20% of the population. So there's not a really big population that can tolerate those foods. So we start removing the inflammatory things, and people start to feel better, and their autoimmune because if you think about it, if you're eating something that inflames your gut, particularly gluten, like gluten there's a paper by a doctor from Harvard called All Disease Begins in the Leaky Gut. So Hippocrates said all disease begins in the gut, and he said all disease begins in the leaky gut. And he talks about how gluten is implicated in diseases like type 2 diabetes, obesity, multiple sclerosis, ankylosing spondylitis, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, like all these autoimmune, really bad diseases. So that's because the gluten causes temporary interstitial permeability, meaning that when you eat this stuff, it tricks the protein. There's a protein called zonulin that guards the tight junctions in your gut lining. And zonulin gets tricked by gluten and opens it up, and undigested food particles and bacteria called lipopolysaccharides get into the bloodstream. So they get in the bloodstream, then you have all this whole systemic inflammation process. And if you have inflammation in your stomach, you have inflammation in your brain there's the gut-brain axis. There's not just directly the blood-brain barrier, but through the cranial nerve, the vagus nerve. So if you trash your stomach, you're trashing your brain. Your brain's inflamed. That's, health, like diet is number one. But what I do in my coaching program that's different than anybody else is I do urinary metabolite testing. So we can look, because hormones and neurotransmitters have a lot of overlapping symptoms when they're unbalanced. You can take a symptom and it's like, okay, is that from a hormone? Is that from a neurotransmitter? Like, how do we know? Well, I test them both, because you have a lot of men and women have a lot of estrogen receptors in their brain. They have to have enough, but they can't have too much, or they have a whole bunch of other side effects. So we test the metabolites of your serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, epinephrine, glutamine, glycine, phenylethylamine, histamine, and we look at creatinine. We look at what your kidneys are doing too. And when we look at this, there's evidence-based protocols where you use vitamins, minerals, amino acids, and you can help bring your brain chemicals back to midline. It's incredible. So the first thing I do when I get up in the morning is have water, and I have all my brain chemistry supplements. That's what I have before I have my coffee. And it's a real game changer. Like, I had really bad ADHD. I've had 6 concussions. I used to be a fighter. So,
wow.
So there was, definitely some issues going on in my brain, and it's a total game changer. I take all these products by a company called Designs for Health. They do sell in Canada. They have a different arm because of regulations, but they do sell in Canada, and I use it because I see people's brain chemistry change. They feel different. They feel better. They can take another test, and it literally changes the battle. You don't have to take Prozac. You don't have to take prescription. You don't have to take Xanax. There's natural ways to do everything, and the natural ways don't have side effects.
I have 2 questions about that. One, we'll get to in a minute. It talks about focusing on sort of exercise as a replacement for Prozac and those medications. But I also hear people that take vitamins that say, I know these aren't doing anything, but I'm taking them anyways because people say I should take them. How do we know? Like, if somebody is taking these vitamins, and maybe not those necessarily, but they've been taking some for a while, and they don't notice a difference, but they're doing it because they feel like they should. Talk to that person.
Yeah, I mean, Jeremy, if you were trying to close a deal and you had a big customer, and man, this commission's just gonna make my year, would you take them to steak dinner at an Applebee's, or would you take them to Smith and Wollensky?
I don't know what the second one is, but it sounds a lot nicer, so we'll say that one.
Yeah, it's the fancy one. You want to close the deal, you want to go the fancy one,
right?
Because right. I mean, ribeye tastes different at Applebee's than it does at the fine steakhouse, correct?
That's right. It's
going to feel different in your belly, right? So it's the same thing with supplements. You get what you pay for. If you're shopping at Walmart or buying from, I don't know what's in the Amazon stuff. There's even fakes. Like, I work with a supplement brand. You need a practitioner code to sign in, and then you get shipped directly from the distributor. Well, my sister was like, oh, I know how busy you are. I didn't want to bother you. So she ordered off Amazon, and she's opened the bottle, and she's like, why do these look different? And then she had the labels next to each other. She's like, oh my God, these are fake. She's like, it's fuzzy. She's like, this is fake. She's like, I just got fake supplements. Like, oh my God.
Yeah, because there's very little regulation, right? So I mean, pretty much anybody can bottle just about whatever and sell it on Amazon.
Yeah, exactly. That's why that's why I say, yeah, if you've I took vitamins when I was doing my functional medicine certification. I was so pissed at how many thousands of dollars I spent on GNC or whatever brand vitamins. When I learned the difference, we use only pharmaceutical grade nutraceuticals. They move the needle. Like you can tell if you take too much, if you try to take a double dose of these things, you're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. It's like, yeah. I took a double dose of the Dopa Boost because I was like, oh, yeah, I have ADHD. I was prescribed Adderall in college. I was like, oh my God, I can't. I was like,
So basically you should, if you're taking some sort of supplement and you don't feel any different, stop it.
yeah, it's probably garbage.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So back to my other question about, dealing with those antidepressants, dealing with those, mental health medications that are available. I'm sure for some they're great and for others they're not. But I found for me, I've tried as many as were prescribed to me and all had negative side effects, things that actually made me worse. But what I have found is getting out off my butt and moving it and lifting heavy things in the gym a few times a week has been the best antidepressant I've ever taken in my life. So talk to me about how exercise can be a supplement to replace those medications.
Absolutely. Well, for a man, it's extremely important to move heavy stuff because that increases your testosterone and your dopamine. Of course, you're going to feel better. Exercise is super important for serotonin as well. That's why I tell people, like, if you're not eating healthy, like, then going outside and getting sunshine and, doing what you can to sweat and push yourself, like, you're not giving yourself a fighting chance. There's no pill that can replace good choices. So, yeah, I tell people start with the 7, because I get people, I help them. I have people that are like, the number one that I get from women that want to get off of is Cymbalta. It's a serotonin and norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor. Mm-hmm. And so I had them take the urine test, and I had one client, it wasn't doing anything for her serotonin, and the other one, it wasn't doing anything for her norepinephrine. I'm like, so these pills aren't even working like they're supposed to. They're not even doing, and it's crazy how the same prescription will have a completely different effect on a different person. Sure. So why don't we just use the urine testing and that gives us a better insight of their genetics? We can look, okay, so there's like certain pathways, like one chemical becomes this one, becomes that one, becomes that one. You remember chemistry class, right? So each gene is coded to create an enzyme. Well, we don't have perfect genetics. So if you have, like, they call them SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms. So if you have a SNP on the gene that's supposed to make your serotonin, you might only be functioning at like a 70% capacity. Or you could have a really bad SNP and only be functioning at 30% capacity. So we can look at that. So what we do is we look at the vitamins, minerals, like we call them the cofactors that are needed to create that chemical. And we just take high doses of them to push it through. So if something's only working at 30% capacity, we may take a double dose of something to push it through and make it function and feel like it's like, and it only takes like 2 weeks turnaround time. Like my clients say, after a week, they start to feel better. After 2 weeks, they're like, oh my God, like people with OCD, their little voices subside. I wrote a case study on a patient that had anxiety and eating disorders for like 20 years. I think the eating disorders a little overlap with the OCD, right? There's a lot of like exercise bulimia and obsessive counting this, counting that. And then the anxiety that goes along with that too. And, we were able to get her BMI up like 2 points in like 5 months, which is remarkable for someone with a 20-year history. So these things really, if you stick with it, do I like getting up in the morning and taking 6 pills? Not really, but do I like the way I feel and that how I can adult and I don't have to worry about being like, I don't have to fight myself. Like everything doesn't have to be such a struggle.
Yeah. So you mentioned something interesting, though, the individuality that we all have because of our genetics and everything that goes into being a human being. Do all of these things you're talking about, the circadian rhythm of eating in a certain cycle and taking these different supplements at different times of the day, is it pretty universal or is it very specific to each individual?
My plan of care is different for everybody. So I have the group coaching program where I teach on something every week. It's good cognitive behavioral learning type strategy. But then when we do our one-on-one, like everybody has a different plan of care. Nobody has the same script. Like I look at their methylation status, their sex hormones, their stress hormones, their brain chemistry, their thyroid output, their heavy metals. I look at their past history when it comes to like toxic exposures. We talk about emotional toxins because those also make people sick.
Okay, so I want to talk about that emotional toxins. I was actually just going to ask you about sort of chronic stress and just, the experience of being a human being, a parent, an employee, someone with a mortgage, all this stuff. How does all of this play into helping out with our emotional, just dealing with stress and everything that goes into being a person?
You'll be surprised with how much better you're able to cope with things when you're eating the 7X method and your hormones and brain chemicals are balanced. Like once you balance the brain chemicals, everything becomes so much easier. But when it comes to dealing with chronic stress, try to stress the stress, no pun intended, good sleep hygiene and trying to get to bed before midnight. I know we want to do stuff after you get the kids to bed. It's like your only free time, but really trying to get yourself to sleep as close to 10 p.m. as possible so that you're waking up with the sunrise. You're getting 9 or 8 hours. You're not depriving yourself. That's the best. I mean, the best anti-aging thing we have. The best way to cope with stress better is to get better sleep.
Okay, so I hear from people a lot, I only need 5 or 6 hours. I'm good
Liars.
At that point. Okay, why? Why are they lying to me?
That's not clinically proven. The evidence states completely differently. I was listening to Diary of a CEO podcast with this female doctor based out of LA. I think her name was Dr. Ma, and she was just a sleep doctor, and she worked with professional athletes. And she said, just by, these pro athletes didn't have very good sleep hygiene. They would stay up late, play video games, take naps after practice, whatever. And once she got them on a strict sleep schedule, their 3-point shot got better, their stats got better. One guy became MVP. It's really critical. There's no such thing. Sleeping 5 hours a night, that just makes it harder for your brain to flush out the amyloid plaques and flush out all the toxins. You have 90-minute sleep cycles. That's why we say you get 7.5 hours of sleep. And in those 90-minute sleep cycles, you have 4 phases of sleep. So you have 2 that are non-deep, then you have deep sleep, then you have REM sleep. So the deep sleep is where your body rests and repairs. And then REM sleep is when especially the frontal lobe, the brain repairs and memory forms. So the first couple sleep cycles you get, you don't have any REM or barely any. You have to get subsequent sleep cycles to get the REM sleep. That's also when you dream. So a lot of times we only remember dreams when we just wake up. If you're dreaming when you wake up, you're good. You know that at least your brain is getting to repair. If you're one of those people that doesn't remember any dreams ever, drinks coffee in the afternoon to get by, then no, you're screwing yourself over and you're setting yourself up for disease.
Yeah. So obviously we're going to point people toward you to work with you, to work directly and learn all of this. But for those that maybe that's not an option for them, what is just a really basic place to start to clean up their diet, clean up their sleep, and start addressing some of the issues that a lot of your clients deal with on a regular basis?
Yeah, absolutely. So the book 7X Method, it's on Barnes & Noble, it's on Amazon, it's in Kindle. I did the whole 8-hour Audible studio thing, and it's in paperback. It's half recipes, so I do like the Kindle for that. And then I like listening to audio. I don't really like reading. Sorry, I write books and I don't like reading. That's horrible to say. But I listen to Audible. That's why I made it, because I know people with ADHD like me read the same paragraph 4 times. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm never going to get through this book. So I have it in Audible. Listen to that. Start changing those principles. I talk about exercise in there. I dispel myths about all kinds of things in there. So yeah, it's about food. It's about circadian rhythm. It's about getting some good sleep hygiene. It all makes sense. It takes 90 minutes to listen to it. Just take 90 minutes, go for a 90-minute walk. You hear the whole damn book and it'll totally change your life. It'll change your whole relationship with food. There's no counting. There's no macros. This whole conception we have of calorie deprivation and all this stuff, it's all, I dispel the myth. The calorie is dead. That's my first chapter.
Nice. I'm interested. You mentioned exercise, circadian rhythm. Is there a specific way we should be exercising throughout the day? Does it matter what time of day we go to the gym or go for that run or whatever?
Yeah, great question. Your cortisol, a stress hormone. Okay, so some cortisol is good, right? There's good stress. When you work out, that stresses your body. That's good stress. And sitting in traffic and yelling at people, that's not going to do anything. That's bad stress. All that does is just release chemicals into your body that aren't needed. So you want to stimulate that good stress. When you wake up in the morning, 30 minutes after you open your eyes, you get this cortisol awakening response, and your cortisol is like 20 times higher than it is when you go to bed. So keep that in mind when you're exercising. If you want to go for a walk, you can go for a walk after dinner, but you want to support that natural cortisol rhythm, because your adrenal glands, they make cortisol, they make norepinephrine, but they also make androgens. So they make testosterone, which converts to estrogen. So when women go through menopause and their ovaries retire, they really need healthy adrenal glands in order to produce hormones. Guys, you need to, it's not just your balls that make testosterone, it's your adrenal glands too. You can't trash your adrenal glands. So you do the hard exercise in the morning when your cortisol is already peaking. If you want to go do some like whatever, CrossFit, boxing, if you want to run sprints, do it then. If you want to do a chill jog, you can do it, anytime during the day.
Awesome. Lots of great information. Obviously, the book is available in the links here in the show notes. Where else can we learn more about you and follow you and sign up for your all you have to offer, I guess?
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So my website's drsarahdoyle.com. It's DRSARAHDOYLE. drsarahdoyle.com. You can see all my stuff. You can sign up for, I do like 30-minute Zooms. If you are like, I've been to 4 different doctors, they told me this, I don't know what I need. Like, it's a good place to start. We'll do a 30-minute telehealth. And if I think you're appropriate for my program, we can go from there. If I think you need referrals to a specialist, I'll help you with that. So you can't lose there. The biohacking bootcamp, you can click on there. I usually charge $5,000 for it, just because if you don't run an online business, you have no idea how much money you have to spend marketing. So when I get people off like marketing, like so much money goes to like Mark Zuckerberg and TikTok and all that. So that's why that price is $5,000. When I do it through a podcast and I know that this is my marketing, I can give you a $2,000 discount. That discount code is MESS, MESS. So you can do that biohacking bootcamp. If you're really not sure, you can follow me on my Instagram. It's X Method, just like the book. On YouTube, I have some videos there. And then my TikTok is South Beach Doc, with a DOC, South Beach Doc, because that's where I am.
My thanks to Dr. Sarah Doyle for partnering with us for this episode. Again, the links that she just mentioned and the discounts she mentioned available in the show notes for this episode at thefitmess.com. I know I'm excited to take a look at her 7X method and changing what I eat and when I eat it to see what kind of an impact it has on my body and the goals that I'm trying to reach. I hope you'll check out her work and let us know how it works for you. But that's going to do it for this episode. We will be back in just a few days. Again, the website is thefitmess.com. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you there in just a few days.
We know this podcast is amazing, and it doesn't seem to lack anything, but we need a legal disclaimer. Prior to implementing anything discussed in this podcast, it is your responsibility to conduct your own research and consult your physician. You should assume that Jeremy and Zach don't know what they're talking about, and they're not liable for any physical or emotional issues that occur directly or indirectly from listening to this podcast.